Get ready for the world's greatest Arsenal podcast. Welcome to another podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Guns and Yellow Ribbons. My name is Fergus, I am your host. We are doing another Arsenal history episode. This is episode 6, actually. I've got it wrong. We've done the overall one and then the other 5 episodes. This is 86 to 96, the George Graham era. I am joined by old man Trev. I am joined by our good friends of the show, which is Mark and Andy. Mark, how are you doing? Your audio should kick in any second now. How are you doing?
Not bad, mate. Not bad at all. Very
got
nice.
A cup of tea. And a number 10.
Cup.
And a number 10 on there. And a famous, another new, hopefully very famous number 10 assigned for us this week, which is really good. Smith Rowe.
Yeah, but that's Merson, mate. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Well, because Mercy, you're talking Mercy, and I poured a scotch. I just think it's far better. Like that. Andy, how are you?
Very well, thank you, gentlemen. Nice to see you again. Becoming something of a habit.
It is. It's becoming Friday night special, isn't it? So yeah. We've had a little bit of preview of what we're going to have for the next episode. We have a bucket hat that Mark had for the 2017 Cup final, which he is not going to show us today, but we saw it beforehand, and we'll have it for next week when we go through the era that Mark doesn't really want to talk about, but he just sold himself into it by giving us that hat, so you can't get out now.
Well, no, obviously, as 17 final was a good final, I just thought I'd show you what I was wearing on the very day that we won the FA Cup.
Okay. Well, we're 86 to 96 right now. Trev, you're facing the wrong way, mate.
Yeah, I know. Fergus, your sound's not brilliant. I can hardly hear you, which is quite pleasant, actually. I just thought I'd let you know. There you go. There's my lad for the season.
Hey.
Hello, boy. Oh, I've got to turn it around now. I've never had a shirt with a name on. I've very rarely, if ever, wear an Arsenal shirt. Normally only at cup finals. But I think that boy deserves my support, our support this year, and he's certainly getting mine, Fergus. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back there and wearing this shirt to a few games.
Actually, it looks nicer on you than it does on the photos.
That's because I'm a nice person, Mark. That's because I'm a nice person.
Really don't do that. Don't do that, Mark. You just can't feed his ego like that.
No, it's the shirt, isn't it? It's not him, it's the shirt.
Oh, I thought it was lasting too long, that Mark.
Yeah, here, I was looking for like some romance music or something to go on in the background. It would have been really, really nice to do just at that very moment in time. But when
it's photographed, the shirt looks bloody awful. But on someone, it actually looks quite good.
To be honest, I'm not keen on the blue stripes at the top.
I like that.
The whites. And
I was going to say the same. I don't get them. Don't get it.
Yeah. I'm all right with the Ajax sort of base, but the Man United stripes, no, not for me. Anyway, let's move on. Enough of stroking Trevor's ego. We're looking at May 1986. George Graham was installed as Arsenal manager after a successful spell as in third division Millwall. Trevor, you put the question to me about if we had employed George Graham as our manager, considering the way that Arteta has been received and Emery is received, etc., how would he be received on social media in this day and age? First of all, your thoughts back then, Trevor. I'll go to you first. Since you're preening yourself, your thoughts back then and your thoughts about how people might behave today.
Well, it's really interesting, Fergus. Firstly, we're now entering an era when I stopped going to many Arsenal games. My kids were born in the mid-'80s, and so I went from going to almost every game to very few games. George Graham was appointed. I didn't see it coming with George Graham. I didn't hear many rumours about it. He's obviously a legend at the Arsenal, a player that I loved, that I liked very much. And he'd been successful at Millwall, but I didn't see him. These boys might know differently, but I didn't see him coming to the Arsenal. he came, and there was lots and lots of whispers from the fans about what are we doing? He's not been experienced enough at the top level. He's got no track record at the top level. But Arsenal gave him a chance. And there's over the course of this program, Fergus, we can draw many similarities to where Arteta is now, I think, if I'm honest. And that's the first one. Arteta's come into the management. You know, he's had some coaching, but he's never been a management at the top level. And that was the case with George. And I honestly think that looking at social media nowadays and looking at how they get on managers' backs very easily, I think George might have got absolutely slaughtered, to be honest. And I'm so pleased that social media wasn't about, and he didn't get slaughtered, and he was left alone for 3 seasons to build what turned out to be an amazing side.
Mark, your thoughts on the appointment of him, his record at Millwall, and obviously the history he had with the club. He was captain and he was involved in cup-winning sides in the 70s. What was your thoughts on his appointment as a manager back then? I know you're only going to be a young lad, but like from a historian and author point of view.
No, I mean, for pretty much what Trev said, really. I mean, you weren't expecting it, but I mean, to be honest, in those days, people used to speak around the pubs, but it wasn't this obsession about who the manager is and this and that. And it's just like he is the manager and that's it. There was not sort of like great beating of breasts and saying he's crap all the time. I mean, Trev's right. Obviously, people were worried about it, but I mean, I didn't. I never saw. I never thought anything like that. You just thought, well, he's the manager. Let's get on with it. Support Arsenal. No, there's no more. I mean, personally, I've never really got interested in the stuff other than the actual physical crowd stuff. I've never been interested in how the club functions. It's just a football club, isn't it?
It's a hobby, isn't it? It's a passion. It's something that we support and we enjoy doing for social reasons.
Yeah, but today there seems to be an obsession with how the clubs run, how much money they make for so and so, and you can't be in charge of any of that. It's
Nope.
someone else. It's someone else's role to do that, not yours. You're just a fan. Just
Fergus, in support of Mark there. Mark has absolutely nailed it there. My recollection of a fan in those days is that you never really worried much about money. The club was making money or losing money, or who was in charge or who was doing what. It was just a case you were going to football to watch your team, and you were going to support your team, whoever was in charge and whoever was playing for them, whether we finished 17th in the league or whether we finished first in the league. You still went to every game, you still met your mates, and that has changed massively. And Mark nailed it with that. Money and management and coaches. Yeah, we looked at who they were and we studied them, but that wasn't that important. You went to support the Arsenal Football Club. That was number one. And I don't think it is number one anymore in this day and age, mate.
No, I don't think it is. Andy, add anything you want to that, but also let's follow on with George Graham's sort of strict disciplinary approach, both on and off the pitch, and how he built that back four with Tony Adams as the centrepiece. And we looked at how that discipline off the pitch disintegrated over the years as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm the same as Trev and Mark. And at the time he was appointed, but there wasn't anyone to discuss it with anyway, because he was appointed in May, and it was in the close season. There was no social media, nothing, no way to interact with other fans unless you knew them. I had a few mates at work that were Arsenal fans, and we probably really didn't discuss it that much. Oh, George Graham's the new manager. Most of us at work were too young to have seen him play in the double season, so we didn't really know what he was like. And we hadn't really followed him at Millwall because, they were a third division team. We might have picked up on them, every so often. The only thing you ever heard about Millwall really was the fans. That's all we really knew about Millwall. We didn't know how well George Graham was there. We weren't following Millwall, knowing that George Graham was manager. So it was a shot out of the blue. So I suppose some people were expecting Terry Venables, and I don't know if Bobby Robson's name might have been thrown in the ring at some point. But he was appointed very early, sort of in a close season. So there wasn't like loads of speculation throughout the summer.
I think Ferguson was in the frame, wasn't he, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So all them big names are in the frame. I mean, Venables at the time, if I remember rightly, was manager of Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Robson was, just as he always was all through his career, a very highly respected and a great man of football. And typical Arsenal, they gave it to George Graham, who, what he had in his favour was he had Arsenal in his blood, didn't he? He'd won stuff for us. He knew the club, and he sort of he was a smart man. He was always dressed immaculately. When he sort of fitted in nicely with your thoughts about the marble halls and the Hillwoods and how Arsenal was run at the time. And Graham with his blazers and ties, and he immediately got all the players in their blazers and ties, didn't he? Do you remember how smart we were?
Yeah.
And we changed. We were like that almost overnight with Graham.
Yeah, and he called players up. Like some players had earrings. I think Charlie Nicholas and Graham Ricks, and he said, "I don't want you wearing them." And he early on, he going back to what you were saying, Ferguson, about his discipline. Early on, if you read David O'Leary's autobiography, he said that Graham treated everyone exactly the same when he came in because he didn't know any of the players. So any players that had a contract coming up, he said, "I'll offer you a year's extension on your contract, and then we'll look at it next year." And that's the state O'Leary was in. And O'Leary was sort of like umming and ahhing, but he decided to stay. Martin Keown decided to go. He wanted a pay rise. He was coming through. But then Graham must have known about certain players, and there was obviously some sort of a clique in the club. So, Tony Woodcock went and Paul Mariner went. So some of the older players and those were in a little clique together, and he was happy to bring on the younger players, the likes of Tony Adams, and eventually brought in Michael Thomas, and Niall Quinn was already doing quite well there, so he put his faith in the youth, and that was probably, from what I've read, is that it's because they would do what he told them. He said, "I want you to do this," and they would do it, and he could mould them.
But also, they wouldn't have the money of today's players. The symmetry with what Arteta is trying to do and what George Graham is doing, from being a former player to winning stuff to being the manager to try and have certain amount of class, is just unreal. He appointed Tony Adams the youngest captain at 17, Trevor. He also brought in the likes of David Rocastle, Paul Merson, Alan Smith, and provided us a great attacking threat. What do you remember of these players? Go. Sorry, Andy. I was looking at my script.
Wait. Tony Adams wasn't the youngest captain, and he certainly wasn't captain at 17.
I love this.
Okay.
Terry Neal was Arsenal's youngest captain.
Yeah.
And he still is to this day.
That, but I'm not arguing that with you, Andy. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that.
But everybody says, the folklore says that if you watch all the huff and puff on Sky Sports and Talk Sport and everything else, they say he was the youngest captain and he was appointed captain at 17. So
they've obviously
not
read our website, have they? Which shows you.
No, they haven't.
When Terry Neal was appointed as permanent captain, and he was younger than when Tony Adams captained the team, permanent or temporary.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
And also, Rocastle was brought in the season before by Donnell.
Yeah.
Fergus in his place tonight. You see,
okay.
You mentioned his signings there, but you didn't mention that George brought in some players from the lower leagues. Like, I'm going to put it was Perry Groves, wasn't it? Ian Allinson, was it, lads? They both came from.
No, he was there before.
He was already there.
He was already there.
Perry Groves. Who was the other one then? The other one that came in. There was two. Perry Groves.
In the first season, he only bought two players. So
go on.
Going back to finances, the club was pretty much skint. So the first player he bought was Perry Groves for probably 30 or 40 grand from Colchester.
Yeah.
And the second player he bought was Alan Smith at the end of the season, and he loaned him back to Leicester for the end of the season.
Yeah.
And then after that, you know, the likes of Dixon and Bold came in from Stoke and Winterburn.
Merson.
Well, Merson came up through the youth team. Going back to what Trev said last week about going, you know, Jeff Barnett and watching him in the reserves. I'd been going to see the reserves for like 2 years before George Graham came along. And I'd been telling all my mates on the terraces about all these great players in the reserves. And they, yeah. And then they started coming through, you know. Adams had already made his debut, but Rocastle, Thomas, Merson, and I said, you know, the other players playing well in the reserves. Sorry?
When did Hayes broke through underground, didn't he?
I think he started playing in 85, 86.
Season before.
Don Howe gave him his debut. But Martin Hayes in the reserves was brilliant, honestly. Yeah. And I think he was given a rough ride by the Arsenal fans. They expected far too much of him. And if he'd been given, a bit like John Samuels, and if he'd been given a bit of an easier time, I reckon he would have turned out to be a much, much better player than we thought of him.
I'd love to meet John Samuels. You know, I know we're getting back before our time now, Fergus, but I did warn you this could be a long one tonight because we're now getting in all of our eras. Last week it was just me being a bit older, but now these boys are writing it as well. And I can remember going as a kid and remember the fans booing Samuels, you know. Before he'd even started the game, they'd boo John Samuels. And for the life of me, I could never work out why, because I never thought he had a bad game, to be honest. You know, he scored some really important goals for the Arsenal, and in the end, they drove him out. We sold him to Leicester, didn't we?
And Gus Caesar gets a bad press as well for one particular game.
88, I was there.
Yeah. But he was fouled. You watch the video again, and he was fouled. You know, and that you pull him up for the mistake, but he was fouled in the build-up to that, and it wasn't his fault at the end of the day. But again, in the reserves, he was a great player.
Yeah.
Before we jump to 88 and 87, we finished 4th. Previously, we finished 7th, 6th, and 10th. But we also reached the cup final, the Littlewoods Cup final, against Liverpool. In the semi-final,
Sorry, can we just go back to something else that happened in 86, 87, Fergus?
Go on.
So although we finished 4th, just looking at the table, on the 15th of November, we went top of the league. And that was part of a 17-match unbeaten run. So to do that, the early part of the season had been a bit stuttering. And I think we went, 1, 2, 4 league games without scoring a goal. And the papers were basically taking a mickey out of Arsenal for not being able to score. And then we scored and we kept scoring. And we've gone from 15th in the league up to 1st, and we stayed there until well into the new year. So for a lot of us to see Arsenal come from sort of like in the lower part of the table in the same season up to the top and then stay up there, I'd never seen that in all the years that I've been going. I've been going there for 10 years, never seen anything like it.
And what caused it? Was that Graham, or what was the turning point then?
I think it was just he came in with Theo Foley. They put their emphasis on defence. We stopped conceding goals, and then the team started to click. You know, he's obviously pushing them hard in training, getting them well drilled, and all of a sudden they all started to click. All these, seasoned pros mixed with the younger players, and he moulded them, and they just clicked, and off they went.
The full Monty film wasn't out by then, was it? So because they had to do the offside rule. Joke.
It's interesting, Fergus, in that we had 3 games against Tottenham in the semi-final, which we could talk about in a minute, mate. But I don't know whether it was because we had a few youngsters in the team and their minds were elsewhere. But between winning the semi-final of the League Cup against Tottenham and winning the final of the League Cup against Liverpool, we didn't win a league game. We lost 4 and we drew 1. And that really shot us in the league. That was the end of any opportunity we're going to do any good in the league, I think. But the semi-finals against Tottenham are restoring themselves, mate. I don't know if Mark, were you at the game?
No.
No, Andy?
No.
Yeah, so I went to the first game at Highbury, and all I seem to remember was we always seemed to be a goal behind all the time.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a shock. I think Clive Allen scored, didn't they?
Yeah.
But Tottenham had a very good team at the time. I hate to say it, but they had a very, very good team. And losing at Highbury, I thought, bit of can't see us coming back from that, especially having to go to White Hart Lane. And then we went a goal down at White Hart Lane as well.
We did.
But I think it was that game that they announced at half time how Tottenham fans could get tickets for the final.
Andy, you've got to stop this now. You're nicking my lines, mate.
And so George Graham has said, listen to that. You go out there, and they came out and they played brilliantly. And we came back and scored a couple of goals to bring it to 2-2. There was no away goals rule in. I think it was really weird the way that they worked the away goals rule in the competition that season, because let me just check. I think it was that season. Oh no, it was the following season. But I think that in the second round it was over 2 legs, and it worked that if the scores were level after the 90 minutes of the second leg, you had to play extra time, and away goals, it didn't count. But at the end of the extra time, away goals counted. And then when they get to the semi-final, that had all gone out the window. So none of us knew what was supposed to happen. Did we win because we scored 2 away goals? Or does it go to a replay? But it went to a replay. And
that was at White Hart Lane, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was there for that one. I didn't go to the first game at White Hart Lane. I went to the second one. The atmosphere was absolutely incredible. It was electric. Yeah. And we've gone a goal down again. So constantly. And then late in the game, we equalised. And then, right at the death, we scored the winner. And I was in the Park Lane end, and it was absolute mayhem in the upper tier.
It was. Limbs everywhere.
Limbs everywhere.
Yeah.
So
and Rocky Rocastle and Allison saw us through by scoring those 2 goals, and we ended up in the final. Ian Rush scored first. Record shows that when he scored first, Liverpool win, but not this time.
When he scores, Liverpool don't lose.
Don't lose. Okay. You could have corrected that when I sent you this.
I told you that earlier. What's the matter with you?
Okay.
We're trying to give people information here, Ferguson, have a good chat, and you're just making basic errors, son. What's going on? What's going on?
Okay. On the stroke of half-time, Charlie Nichols prodded a gift. He's basically scored, and Perry Groves came on as a substitute and found Nichols for the second shot, and we win 2-0. And we win the League Cup for the first time in our history. Mark, your thoughts on that game, that performance? Perry Groves from Colchester?
Well, the first thing to say is that, and I think Trev might be trying to get here to say it's Nicholas.
Nicholas, yeah, I'm crap with that one.
And we also won 2-1, not 2-0, mate.
2-1
Rush did score.
Ian Rush did score, yeah. Listen, Trev, I'll leave you carry on, yeah? I'll see you later.
I love you, son. I love you. Come back. Come more way. Fergus.
No, I mean, from a historical perspective, if you look at it that way, you could say that the semi-final was the start of modern Arsenal, because it was the first, as Andy pointed out, we were top of the league, or we were top of the league in that season. We'd obviously dropped off a little bit, but winning the semi-final, the way we won it, the resilience they showed, and also, as Andy said, the buy-in from the crowd, from the fans, was brought everything together, and the final. It was just like, I know I sort of half expected us to win, even though Rush had scored. I didn't go watch. I watched it on the telly. But it was I don't know. It was just odd. You just expected us to win. It was weird. Really, really, really weird.
Even against informed Liverpool, because Liverpool were the Harlem Globetrotters of First Division
Oh, of course they
football.
were. Yeah. But you, I don't know. You just had the feeling that we were going to win. It's one of those things. It's like '89. I know we're going to come to it, but on the day, up until the day, I thought we were going to lose, and on the day, I watched it with my mate who I used to go all the games, and a Liverpool fan, and he was giving it the big one, and I just sort of suddenly said to him, "We're going to win this game." And, I didn't think of it before, and all of a sudden, just because he was such an arrogant whatnot, it was like, well, we'll win it. And you sometimes have a feeling before a game, and it normally does come true, which is a bit of a pisser, really, because when you know you're going to lose, aren't you? So,
yeah, that's so. 88, we finished 6th in the league. We're runners-up in the League Cup.
So can I just go back? Just go back.
Yeah.
No, this Ian Rush record. Do you know after that game? Do you know when the next time that Liverpool lost a game when he scored?
Against us.
No.
Eh?
Against us, I reckon.
The following week against Norwich. We've broken properly.
So in '88, the League Cup run was trips to Doncaster, Sheffield Wednesday away, and that infamous horrible final against Luton in the League Cup, the Littlewoods Cup as it was called then, final. Trevor, talk to me about that, because we've talked a few times about that cup run, the 88 one. I know you didn't get to as many of the games as you'd like to with young families and stuff like that, but you do remember the games.
Well, do you know what, Fergus? Strangely enough, although I didn't get to many games, I went to a lot of the games in that cup run, and it brings me back a smile. That apart from the final, it brings back a smile because we're playing at Doncaster. We're away at Doncaster. It's an evening game, and it's freezing cold. And me and my mate Paul, we thought we had a phone call to each other the day before, and we said, right, we're going to go tomorrow, but we're both going to have to phone in sick because we both worked in the railway industry at the time. We're both on afternoons. We worked at Stratford Train Crew Depot. So I said to him, right, you ring in the morning about 9. I said, no, I'll ring in about 9:30, 9:45. So anyway, he must have rung in because I rung in, and the foreman knew we were both Arsenal fans. I mean, I went, hello, whatever his name is. Hello, mate, it's Trev here. And he said to me, you're going sick, aren't you? I said, I'm not very well. How did you know that? He said, because your mate's just rung in and gone sick. So I said, okay, fair enough. I said, I'll ring you tomorrow if I feel better. He said, yeah, all right, you do that, and put the phone down on me. So he goes on the train to Doncaster, right? And it's the old ground. It was right opposite the racecourse at Doncaster. What was Bellevue? It was called, I think, the old Doncaster football ground. And it had a weird little away end. It was about a third of one end, and you were all caged in, no roof on it. And it was a great night in the end because all the Arsenal players came out to warm up, and I can remember having a chat with Lukic before the game started. And in them days, everyone played in the League Cup. But we get us on the train to come home, and we managed to sneak on the Arsenal special coming home. We'd gone up on the ordinary train, and we got down the line a bit. I don't know where far down the line we got, and the train stopped, and we were dying at first. We'd been on the beer all night, and we're on this train. So I just thought, right, I'm going to jump off this train and see if I could get a tap quick at this station, get a drink. And as I jumped off the train, this copper came running along the platform from nowhere, give me a massive, great right hook to the side of the head and said, get on that train, you little shit. Right, excuse my language. So my tail went between my legs, and I jumped back on the train, and we came home. But we got through to the next round. Where
you're what, about 55 then, or whatever, 55, 56?
46.
46. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 46. And I got in trouble. And was it the next round? I'm just looking here. Was it the next round when we played? No, we played Bournemouth after that. I didn't go to that game, Fergus, but then we drew Sheffield Wednesday, I think. Then we played Stoke. Then when did we play Sheffield Wednesday? In the 5th round, we played Sheffield Wednesday, right? Away. So there's a few of us want to go, and we thought, well, we're not doing what we did with Doncaster with a train. We'll hire a car, 5 of us, hire a car, draw lots out the out, and one of us will have to drive. So anyway, one of the lads is driving. There's 3 of us in the back, 1 in the front. Gone up to Sheffield.
Excuse me, 1 second. Who organised this draw?
Not me, but I didn't lose. I was honest as they come in. So, yeah, but we've got a car and we've had a few beers on the way up, and 4 of us are drunk, and 1 of us is real grumpy, the driver. And we goes in the game, and we got parked up at the ground, and we goes in the game. We're in the Leppings Lane end, which is the season before all those poor Liverpool fans, God rest them, you know. And even that night, it was crammed in there. And it's just a League Cup game, you know. It was rammed in that Leppings Lane, and it was a very shallow standing area with a big seating area behind it at the Leppings Lane end. So anyway, we've won the game 1-0, and I think their goalkeeper, Sheffield Wednesday's goalkeeper's name was Martin Hodge, made the biggest mistake I've ever seen from a goalkeeper. Let the ball go straight through his legs. We nick an Arsenal 1-0. So he comes out the ground. We're all happy, and we gets in the car. And this is no word of a lie. On my kid's life, this is true. We've got the windows down in the car and we're driving along and we're all chatting. We're not singing and shouting, but we're all chatting. Obviously, they can hear with Cockneys. And suddenly, this bloody great Yorkshire policeman, another policeman, runs up to the driver's side passenger window and lumps his fist through the window like that. Bang! And gives it the big F off you Cockneys. Get back south. Straight through the front window his fist went. And do you know what? What was the bonus? I was in the back, so I didn't cop it. Yeah, so go on
and give somebody else a chance, guys. Who wants to talk about that final briefly against Luton?
No,
Andy, go.
Yeah, well, we you know, it was really strange. You know, we'd gone a goal down, and then we brought on Martinez, and I think we were 2-1 up, weren't we? And I thought, this is it, and then we got a penalty.
Yeah,
we missed. But even when we missed the penalty, I thought, this is us. Yeah, we're now, you know, because we come back to 2-1, I thought we're going to like murder them, absolutely murder them. And then it all just fell apart after the penalty miss.
I think that's got last minute, didn't they, or something?
Yeah, and then as you know, we talked about earlier, poor old Gus Caesar was fouled, which no Arsenal fan gives him any leeway for, and leads to them scoring. And it's like, it just didn't seem right. The whole game, even though we were behind, I thought, yeah, no problem. You could see the way the team was playing. But yeah, we're going to come back. We'll win this, not a problem. And then at the end, it just became like Keystone Cops, and it's like, how did we lose that?
The thing is, it's typical of us, isn't it? In a cup final, we beat the best team in the country one year. The next season, we lose to a pub team, basically.
Yeah.
Mm. So we're up to 1989, a fantastic year for Arsenal Football Club, but not a great year for Liverpool. Hillsborough happened. I know Trev said the previous year at Leppings End, but it happened in 1989 in Leppings End. The Hills disaster delayed football for wasn't that 89? No.
Yeah.
What?
88, 89.
88, 89. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And it delayed the end of the season. So the end of the season was played on a Friday night. It was put on ITV, which didn't happen often in those days. That league football was on terrestrial TV. It was pre-Sky, pre any of that sort of stuff. It was normally, I believe, only maybe the World Cup and the FA Cup final and stuff that used to be on TV, bar match of the day. So the wheels had come off for Arsenal a little bit. We were coasting a little bit towards the title, but the final 2 home matches against Derby and Wimbledon, we had a defeat and a draw. Didn't help that Liverpool went and thrashed West Ham 5-0. So it left us with needing 2 goals to win by goal difference on that delayed game on Friday, May 26th, after the Hillsborough disaster. George Graham, a tactical genius. Mark, answer that question.
Well, yeah, because we won.
Oh, Jesus, you're hard work sometimes, you know that.
He set them up and he said, right, don't let a goal in the first half and we'll try to get breaks and then the second half. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you want us to say? Now, he changed the system around, didn't he? He played 3 He played the 3 centre backs to start.
He done 3 at the back. He done Dixon, Winterburn,
O'Leary,
and
Bold,
and
Adams.
So O'Leary was like playing as like a sweeper, weren't he?
Yeah. O'Leary was
like a W.
which, to be honest, was a really good system because he was a sweeper, wasn't he? He was a brilliant sweeper. We I mean, I don't know. Liverpool seemed a bit becalmed during the game. It wasn't their usual gung-ho thing, but I think because all they had to do was draw, wasn't it, or lose 1-0, and they'd won it. And I think that's what they relied on, because I'm not convinced that Dalglish was a particularly great manager, but Graham set it up and we won. So.
Well, it is the year of 1-0 to the Arsenal, so you could understand why Dalglish would go down that route.
I have to stop you there, Fergus. 1-0 to the Arsenal only came in 1994.
Okay.
Because
I'm getting
Pet
ruined
Shop
every
Boys
week.
song was brought up in the 1994 European Cup Winners' Cup campaign from the semi-finals.
Okay. Well, my sentiment by that comment, then, let me clarify it for you, Mark, was we were very defensive under Graham and we didn't concede many goals, and a 1-0 win was like as good as a 10-0 win for others.
No, we weren't. We were really we used to score loads of goals under Graham. It was only at the end of it that we got really, really defensive, and then he used to win 1-0. That's where it came about. Well, it's true, isn't it? We used to score a lot of goals.
Well, we won that. We won the league that season on the number of goals we scored.
He's done it.
That's what it came down to. At the end of the day, they had the same goal difference, but we scored more goals than them. Come back. We'll teach you some more, Fergus. That is great.
Andy's done me again like a kipper, because our defence that season wasn't as tight as Liverpool's, Fergus. We let in more goals, but we scored more goals, which is, if you didn't know that fact, you would never think it was that way round. With our history of being a good defensive side, but we did actually let more goals in and we scored more goals than Liverpool.
Alan Smith was top scorer in the first division that season. But just going back to the West Ham Liverpool game and something that happened early on in the season, I think Arsenal should give Strike a medal for another player who didn't actually play for us, and that was Leroy Rosinia of West Ham, because he was the man who scored West Ham's goal in that 5-1 defeat.
That single goal.
If he hadn't scored that goal, we would have had to win 3-0. Now 2-0 was quite something. There's no way we would have won 3-0.
Oh no.
But also earlier in the season, we played West Ham in the FA Cup. I don't know did you go to any of them games? Either of them games, Trev? One of them was on the telly.
I wouldn't be able to recall that. Mate.
So we drew 2-2 at Upton Park. I'm pretty certain that one was live on the telly. And then the replay at Highbury, we lost 1-0. And Leroy Rosinia scored that goal.
Yep.
Now, if he hadn't scored that goal, if you look at West Ham's run, I'm not sure if they got to the semi-final, certainly to the quarterfinals. But they had a nice, easy run to that point. And the chances are, if we'd had that same run, we would have got to the quarterfinals and possibly the semi-finals.
Yeah.
And then that could have distracted us heavily from the league campaign. So I think, those 2 goals that Leroy Rosinia scored played a big part in us winning the league that season.
So before you go, Trev, one second. We're entering into the era where I've now moved over to London in '88, and I'm starting to remember some of the stuff you talked about. I remember the football on TV that Friday night. We had a pub in Marble Arch, and I remember having the TV rolled down and stuck on tables, and everyone gathering round. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. But before we go into the second half of this game, Trev, go and say what you're going to say, mate.
No, I just wondered if I'm allowed to talk yet, because you just told me to stop and not talk anymore.
Yes, you can.
I'm allowed in now, am I? I'm allowed in now. You see, before you talk about the second half, I don't know if this is true in my head. Oh, are you done? Are you done?
Yeah.
Once more and I'm off. I'm going to put the same shirt on as you. But Liverpool wouldn't have thought they were going to lose that game for 2-0. Never in a million years. Never in a minute. They were the best team in the country for years. Their record in the league was second to none. They were multiple European champions, and they weren't going to lose that game 2-0. They didn't have a clue. They thought they were home and dry, mate. I'm telling you. Well, that's how I view it anyway. And they got the shock of their lives because everyone's been talking this week about our number 10s and how famous they were and how great they were. No one's mentioned Stevie Bold. No one's mentioned Stevie Bold at number 10.
Yeah.
Go on. You started, so you'll finish.
I'm done. You can take over now with your super.
No. You mentioned about Stevie Bold was playing number 10, that position, number 10 on that night.
Well, in them, you didn't have squad numbers. You just had the team was 1 to 11. The goalkeeper was 1. And if it all worked out right, the winger was number 11. It went through the side. But Steve Bold played in number 10 that night. And he played at centre half because we played 5 across the back. Or 2 wing backs, however you want to put it. You know, it was quite a new theory in those days. It wasn't something that happened a lot. And so Stevie Bold wore number 10 and played at centre half, which may have even been unique. I don't know, in the Football League in them days. So, yeah, great number 10, Steve Bold.
So 7 minutes after the break, we take the lead. Winterburn curled in a free kick from the right. Alan Smith glanced the ball over Grobbelaar. The Liverpool players surrounded the referee, claiming Smith had not touched the ball, or he might have been offside, and they were protesting about this goal. I'll go to you, Andy, on this one. Obviously, the referee rejected. History says it stood. From your memory, where were they coming from?
Well, you know, it was Liverpool, Anfield, and they were infamous for getting. You know, the crowd at Anfield were infamous for getting on the referee's back and the official's back, and it was one of those things. You know, you're watching the game and you're thinking that the way that it's going to go, they're going to find something. They're going to find something, and I think that, you know, even the TV cameras were, you know, giving replays because it was the game was stopped for so long, and I think they said, oh, Alan Smith's got a brown mark on his forehead. Does that mean that he's headed the ball? But the officials, I think that the linesman had said to the referee, yeah, he definitely touched it and he wasn't offside. I actually got to ask Alan Smith the question, did you actually touch the ball that night? It was a supporters event. He said, get out. Don't ever ask me that question again.
That's the best answer he could give, isn't it? Listen, following on from that, and what's probably the most spine-tingling move in Arsenal in football history, John Lucas threw the ball out to Dixon. A raking pass found Smith, which found Thomas. Thomas through the middle. And, you know, he got a bit lucky with the bounce. But here we go.
Barnes has beaten Adams. Aldridge is waiting at the far side. Adams is after his
While this is playing, don't forget he'd had exactly the same opportunity earlier on in the game and fluffed it.
We had him lead,
forward now. Surely what will be their last attack?
But the old goosebumps coming up now.
Finding Smith.
Years in the back of the net.
Yeah, played it off his arse.
Thomas! Right at the end.
Watch that over and over and over again.
So who was there, boys? Who was there? Any of you?
No, I had the opportunity, but I just didn't fancy going up there on a Friday night.
I wish
How much do you regret that?
I suppose I do now, yeah. I didn't think we'd win, to be honest, and that's why I didn't really want to go. I didn't want to go up and then have to make that horrible journey back.
I agree. I only thought we'd win half an hour before the game, and purely because of the company I was in. There's no other real reason.
You know, as this plays through here, Thomas has just scored that goal, and in a minute, Thomas plays such a cheeky back pass to Lucas. Cool as you like, as laid back as you like here. Mickey Thomas, what? Oh, how cool have you got to be? You've just scored a goal. You're going to win the league, and he's that cool that he can do that back pass. Brilliant.
Back in the day when the goalie could pick the ball up from a back pass.
Absolutely, yeah.
Those are the days.
Yeah, I wish I'd gone, lads. But I'm in your boat, and I just didn't think we were going to win it. And I made no effort to go.
Momentous occasion this for Arsenal. Coming
Brilliant.
here.
Wow. Listen, we all go quiet just looking at that, just recalling it, and I do recall it. Not probably as fondly as you guys, because my passion didn't grow as much as it is now until a few years later. But this man at Anfield walks away with that cup. George Graham, how I'm trying to think of the right phrase on a scale of 1 to 10, but how great was that achievement for a manager in that position to get to it? How good is he in comparison to, say, a modern day manager? Mark, you're going to give me a very short answer because I know you always do. How good?
It's difficult to say. It's a different era, isn't it? It's about different players. Whether you can compare him to a manager now, because he probably couldn't get away with what he did with the players then that he does now. So whether his techniques would work now, I doubt very much, or more than one season, or two max. And he got away with being Gaddafi, as it were, for many years. So it's difficult to say. I mean, it wasn't an era when players were in charge, the manager was in charge, the players listened to what the manager was telling them. So it's I don't think you can compare. It's different era. Different era. But he's my favourite. He's my favourite manager that I've at Arsenal.
Me too, Mark. Me too, mate. Me too. Yeah. I love the man. And as much as he was, Gaddafi is a good term, really, because he did strike you as being this dictator, didn't he? But I don't think the players disliked him, did they? Because if the players dislike you, they're not going to make that effort for you like those players did. He had something,
because you can see that you're playing for a whole, can't you? You're not playing for yourself anymore. You're playing for a greater, for a greater entity.
A team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a team as well, wasn't it? There was no real superstars there.
No.
It's like back to the 70-71 season. Apart from Charlie George, there's no superstars, and they all played for each other.
Yeah. Just before we move on, Fergus, I'm sorry to butt in again, mate, but I just must mention a player that don't get mentioned enough from that 89 side, and it'd be interesting to get Andy and Mark's view. Kevin Richardson, for me, was the quiet assassin of that side. Superb player. Superb efforts for Arsenal Football Club that season. Under the radar, just played his heart out every game he played, and needs to be mentioned more often as part of that side.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
I can remember when we signed him, and I thought, well, what were we signing him? Because I think we bought him from Watford. He won the league at Everton,
wasn't it?
Yeah. And we signed him the season, the 87-88. What do we need him for? And then 87-88, he had a run he scored about 10 goals in 12 games. I mean, where did he come from? But yeah, that season, 88-89, he was, as you say, he was just there, and he'd done absolutely everything that was asked of him. And if there was an anti-superstar, it was Kevin Richardson. He just did everything for the team.
Absolutely.
And I think if you speak to any Arsenal fan who went and watched Arsenal in that era, they would all say exactly the same. Yeah, sort of player that any team would love to have. Just before we go, I don't know if you can see behind me, I've got a poster up on my
slightly above your head.
Yeah, it looks like a Jackson Pollock, but what it is, it's the pass map for the that game. So it's got all got red dots are Liverpool, blue dots are Arsenal, and you can't see it, but there's two white dots where we scored.
Oh, brilliant! Maybe stick a copy up on Twitter and in the comments.
It's from a company called Goal Hanger.
All right.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm listening back to what you guys are saying about this formation of a team and thinking about the way Arsenal is today, and I just hope that there's a lot of these people. We talked about social media at the very beginning. Hope a lot of these youngsters that listen and take their views on social media. Listen to this podcast in particular, whatever about the other ones about learning about the history, but to look at the parallels that where we are right now are just just so unreal. 1991, we went almost undefeated. We only lost. Well, first of all, we won the league in 1991 without even kicking the ball. Liverpool lost 1-0 to Nottingham Forest at lunchtime. Arsenal walked out to a jubilant Highbury welcome. George Graham's Gunners were worthy champions. They'd just lost once over the course of the season, which was a 2-1 defeat. Reverse at Chelsea. So we lost 2-1 to Chelsea. Conceded just 18 goals, keeping 24 clean sheets, with David Seaman being a star of that famous back four. In the end, we ended up with 83 points from the 38 games. Talk to me about this season. And added to that fact, in October, we got docked 2 points, Sandy, for the brawl at Old Trafford.
Yes, so that had come about. I think it had been boiling up for a couple of years because it was 87-88. We played Man United in the FA Cup at Highbury, and there's a massive crowd there. And Brian McClare missed a last-minute penalty. He blasted it right into the.
You just miss it, yeah.
I've heard say that Richard Branson passed that ball last week.
and a couple of the Arsenal players had a little pop at him. Took the Michael out of him after that. And then I think there was another incident where David Rocastle got sent off against Man United, where he'd been given a bit of a kicking. And so it had been boiling over for a while. And in that game in October, I think it was Anders Limpar was down on the ground, and a Man United player came over and kicked him. And that was it.
Yeah,
all hell broke loose.
I think.
Yeah, and 21 players were involved in all sorts of scuffles. I don't think any punches were thrown. David Seaman was the only one who steered clear of it all. And then because we'd been involved in an incident the season before with Norwich, where something similar had happened when we ended up winning 4-3, we got the heaviest penalty with having 2 points docked, and Man United had 1 point docked, which seemed a bit unfair, really, because Man United started it all off. Really, it was all down to them.
It was damn unfair, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It was a travesty of justice. But once again, Man United got away with a little bit, and Arsenal didn't.
Yeah, but it gave us a fantastic song.
Exactly.
Yeah, which I don't think we can repeat on this family broadcast.
You can stick your
probably not.
2 points up yet.
Posterior region. You can
stick your 2 points.
But the best of it was the night that we were champions, as you said. Forest had beaten Liverpool, so that evening we came out as champions to a guard of honour from Manchester United.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And was that wasn't the night of that the microphones were on the referees and stuff? Or was that in the Premier League era? We're going a bit more forward.
I think that was Millwall. Millwall game against Millwall.
It was Millwall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was around that time.
Well, I think that was 89 season of Millwall, because that was Ellery, wasn't it? The ref.
It was, yeah.
Yes.
When you hear Adams go, "You cheat, you cheat." It's quite amusing.
I was privy just before all this lockdown stuff happened in the March 20. What year are we in? 21. March 2020. Yeah, March 2020. I was in the boardroom. Something to do with the Arsenal fan supporters forum, and it was to do with VAR and how they were looking at changing with the T-shirt rule and all this. And they played us the actual audio footage of referees now talking to the players on the pitch, and Ellery is just as eloquent as some of the other players that were on that game at Millwall. He uses the same French language talking to players this very day. So, they all got to curb themselves if they want to go into that. I'd actually like ref things a bit like you do get in rugby and F1 and everything else. So we've moved into the year of the Premier League. I think Leeds won the last. Am I right in saying Leeds won the last First Division?
Yeah.
Fergus, just please don't move on a second, mate. I know I cut you off a lot, but I've got to make a statement here from my perspective, and I want to see what all three of you boys' thoughts are. That 91 side was a better side than the 89 side. I have no doubt that we had George Graham had progressed that 89 side. We had a poor 1990. I think it was a bit of a come down from the year before. But then in 91, Fergus, you touched on it just now, mate. We only let in 18 goals, but we're near top scorers again in the league. We scored 70 odd again in the league. And we're so close. It needs to be said, we're so close to being the first Invincibles. We lose a game at Chelsea that we shouldn't have lost. We lose it 2-1, I think. Did we lose? I can
Lost 2-1. Yeah.
We lost 2-1.
I think that was the only game where Steve Bolt didn't play the whole game. He came off and we lost that.
Yeah. An incredible achievement to let in 18 goals in a 38-game season. It's an incredible achievement. And that 91 side was, although they were both fantastic sides, that 91 side is my favourite side under George Graham.
And talking about, Kevin Richardson had left by then.
Yeah.
Talking about players that came in and you didn't expect them to do what they did. Someone who came in halfway through the season and he played absolutely fantastic, did the job that he had to do, David Hillier. He was a young lad, and I've been watching him in the reserves, and I didn't really rate him that much. I didn't think he'd make it in the first team because they kept playing him in different positions. They played him at centre-back, and he's only a little fella. But he came in, they stuck him in the centre and midfield, and he was hard as nails. And, he was great at man marking. And George Graham told him, you go and do this. And he went and did it. And he's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's a really nice bloke as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a bit of a, please don't talk about it, boys, but he's got a bit of a chalice around his neck, which he doesn't deserve, So just leave it at that, because he's a good lad, good man, lovely bloke on Twitter. I don't know him personally, but he'll chat to you on Twitter.
He didn't do that as well.
I don't think for a minute he did, Mark. I don't think for a minute.
I spoke to him at a book signing.
Yeah,
he told me everything.
Yeah, I believe you, Mark. Absolutely believe you, mate. Yeah.
So 93 Premier League has started, but we concentrate on the cup. We win the League Cup again, the FA Cup. Both finals against Sheffield Wednesday. I believe one of those is that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is one of those the ones with where we had to No, that was later. No, my brain is trying to jump into recalling mode.
That was in the Wenger era, mate. That was in the
Wenger. Through Morrow over.
It is actually, during the League Cup winning, Tony Adams dropped goal scorer Steve Morrow, breaking his arm and putting him out of the FA Cup final. But in the semi-final against Tottenham, Tony Adams scored that goal when the donkey wins the derby.
We've got a free kick then. Adams has now gone up as well.
Here we go again.
And Merson chips it in, and in came Tony Adams. And Arsenal have taken the lead. And the captain.
Look at those boys.
That was a great free kick, though, wasn't it? Perfect. Where Adams where he was.
And turned the game round there.
What's his stats on goals scored for Arsenal then? How many goals did he score then?
Adams came forward, and I think
I'd have to look that up, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I should have warned you.
He only scored 4 that season. One in the FA Cup, one in the league.
What's that, Trev? Sorry?
He scored 4 goals that season, Adams. 1 in the FA Cup, that one. One in the league and 2 in the League Cup. I've beaten Andy to it.
But all told, he scored 48 goals for us, which isn't too bad for a central defender.
No, and we had that corner, didn't we? To the near post for Bold to flick on, and Adams steaming in like a rock at the back post, whacking it in. And Fergus, you're gonna have to tell me to shut up again in a minute, but I'll only be 30 seconds.
I've given up.
this was a prime example of the red top newspapers at their very lowest. At their very lowest. We've got a young man called Tony Adams who's got his own personal problems that none of us knew about really at the time. And suddenly they stick a picture on their back page of the head of Tony Adams on the body of a donkey and start calling him a donkey. Why would you do that to a young lad? What makes these red top newspapers that are still a disgrace to this day? I've never ever bought one. What makes them stoop that low to do that to another human being? Tarring that young man with that label of being a donkey. And it still gives me great pleasure to this day to sing Donkey Won the Derby at the Tottenham fans, because they deserve it. They deserve every second of it, mate. But the red top newspapers, disgraceful. Not just that, just 10 more seconds. I watched the Paul Gascoigne documentary the other night, lads, right? And Paul Gascoigne fell out with all his family because he thought his family were telling the newspapers all about him, because he'd send his family messages on the phone. And the next day, the story would be all over the newspapers. And Gascoigne's falling out with all his family. Another young man that's got troubles, well-known troubles, that everyone knows he's got these issues. And it's the bloody newspapers. For 11 years, not a year or two, 11 years they hacked Gascoigne's phone. They nearly finished him. They're a disgrace. Anyway, back to the football, Fergus. I'm sorry, but I had to get that in, mate.
No, that's fine. 93 was also another year. Mark, do you want to talk about the North Bank, the new North Bank? I think bonds, from memory, bonds were issued. It opened in August 93, costing £20 million. I think it was the fourth.
Really, I stopped going then.
You had stopped going by then.
I did the same as Trevor. I didn't like the fact that there wasn't the terraces were. They basically bought in seating. My son was born in 94. So that was it, really. Went to the odd game here and there after that. But my main period was what we've been talking about, to be honest. The Bond split fans. I know my brother had a seat. But I as I said, I don't like sitting at football. If you're going to sit at football, you might as well sit in your front room and watch it on telly.
Well, myself and Trev still in the bowl, that Ashburton Grove, the Emirates, whatever you want to call it. We don't sit in our seats. The stewards are quite good. They just leave the North Bank. It stayed standing. And any time I was in the North Bank lower at Highbury, I never sat in a seat. If you sat in the seat, someone would call you.
It's still not the same. Like, you don't get the surges and you don't get all the other, which obviously they wouldn't want.
No, I get and understand that. Listen. I never attended a Premier League or First Division game in England like that, but I did go as a child to Ireland. But you're talking about you're getting surged by cattle and sheep and a few people in between. So it's a completely different experience. Andy, your thoughts on that North Bank development, and then we'll go into 94 and 95.
Yeah, it was a fantastic, piece of architecture. Great football stand, well catered for. But it started. The Taylor report started to take the soul out of the game. Mm-hmm. And as Mark says, once it's all seater, it's just so little atmosphere there. It's very hard to generate an atmosphere. On the terraces, you could get a group of people together that wanted to sing together, but they're just sort of like all over the place.
Yeah.
Trev.
Why is that?
A key to the story here, Fergus. A key to the story is not so much the development of the North Bank; it's the development of the clock end. The development of the clock end fell wrong for the Arsenal because we developed it with executive boxes up the top, and they spent a lot of money in the executive boxes putting them in and standing underneath it. And then the clock end stand wasn't very old at all when they had to turn the lower tier of it into seating. And I honestly think that if they hadn't developed the clock end before the legislation come in saying we had to go all seater, my view, and it might be just my view, is that there's a possibility that we might have stayed at Highbury, because they could have, with the old clock end terrace, if they'd have known it was going to be all seater, they could have made it much different. They could probably put another 7, 8, 9, 10,000 on the capacity, because they had space behind the clock end. They had a lot of space behind the clock in Fergus. They could have done a lot more there.
There's also the flats behind as well, so there'll be less objection.
They're a long way away though.
They're a long way away.
Yeah.
We had the train behind the clock in Fergus. Remember?
Yeah. No, but what I mean is knowing the local residents and knowing how active they are even now about the Emirates Stadium and Drayton Park and parking and this, that, and the other. I think if we were to redevelop the stadium there and maybe further again another time at the North Bank, we could have got away with the two ends being higher. I think you would have struggled with the listed East Stand and the West Stand with having the houses right behind, I think. But yeah, really good point. Huge, really, really valid point, Trev. Really valid point. 1994 European Cup glory.
Just going back to 93, there were two things that happened. Well, certainly one thing that happened.
I got
first
married.
Game of the season, 93, 94, you got married. Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Poor girl.
You didn't get married on the first day of the season, did you?
No.
I'm looking now.
So, unfortunately for us, the first game that was played in front of that new stand was against Coventry. And, we should have stuffed them, but they came to us and fat boy Mickey Quinn scored a hat-trick. And we lost 3-0 at home to Coventry. Not a good start for it, but that game saw the birth of an Arsenal legend, Gunnosaurus. That was his first.
Really?
Appearance. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
I know Jerry. Well, I don't know Jerry. That's not strictly true, Andy. I spoke to Jerry a few times briefly, and he done me a right favour once at the Emirates and got me to see the FA Cup. A wonderful man, wonderful man. I wonder if he was actually Gunnosaurus from the very start then.
I'm not sure.
I believe he was. I do believe he was.
His family was quite involved in the club for quite a while, weren't they? His son worked there.
It was the thing about Gunnosaurus was it was a 12-year-old. There was a competition in the local schools, and I believe it was some 12-year-old boy who wrote had a thing about dinosaurs, or maybe it might even been younger, and Arsenal, and he made a dinosaur with the crest on front, and he won the competition, and I think he became a match day mascot for the day, and Gunnosaurus was invented. But Jerry, I believe, was Gunnosaurus right through till, unfortunately, he was made redundant. But he did do other roles within the club later on, and he did work full time for the club, and he wasn't made redundant due to being Gunnosaurus. So there was a lot more involved than that. Listen, without getting into that, Cup winners, the European glory with Cup Winners' Cup, Kevin Campbell, our friend of the show, really good fella. He's always open to jumping on various podcasts. Such a friendly guy, and me and Trevor know him well. Trev, you've got him in your speed dial on your phone, even. Well, not quite, but you know what I mean.
No, Fergus, I haven't got his speed dial in my phone. No,
I'm not trying. You are good friends with him.
Kevin Campbell has. I'm not going to dwell on it because it's not for me to talk about it. But Kevin Campbell has been a real good friend to my family recently, and I will be forever in his debt. And he shows footballers in a light that we don't often see. I've told you about what he's done for me recently, Fergus, Kevin Campbell, and he's a fine man. He's helped my family. He's lifted my family in a time when a lot of us have been down, and we'll be forever grateful to the man. And I'll never, ever have a bad word said about Kevin Campbell. He's a top fella, and I'll leave it there. Love you, Kev. Top man.
On that note, here's his goal against PSG in the semi-final.
Dixon looking to measure up across, gets one in. It's a goal there. It's Kevin Campbell.
There we go, Super Kev.
Yeah. Now we can sing it.
Now we can sing it.
So this is the day the song was invented. No, this era.
It's the first leg. Well, it's debate. Some people think it was sung in the Torino quarterfinal. But it's generally seen to be the away game that it come about because the opponents were singing. Their crew was singing a French version, and it was just picked up by Arsenal, and they, changed it.
And we went on then afterwards to play against Parma in the final.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan Smith, what's that?
What a great side Parma were. Fantastic, Fergus. Go on, carry on, mate. I'll butt in again in a minute. Go on, pal. Sorry.
No. Listen, I was just going to say, Alan Smith scored really, really early on with this goal.
Dixon. Acrobatics, but it comes for Smith.
What a cracking goal.
For Arsenal. Alan Smith, a super strike for the Gunners.
What a cracking goal. So Alan Smith scores early, and we hang on, Trev. That's I think what you were trying to allude to, how much we hung on there afterwards to eventually pick up our excluding the Fairs Cup, our major cup victory.
We did hang on, but I don't know how. One of these boys can enlighten us. I don't know how Parma did.
No idea how we did.
Who did that? Had Zola, Brolin. Was Asprilla playing for him?
Asprilla,
yeah, he was. Yeah, they had an amazing side, and we scored too early, and I still don't know to this day how we've won that game 1-0. I don't care. I'm over the moon, but to this day, I don't know how we held on and won that game. But I'm so pleased we did. Andy, Mark, any idea?
No. It was it's just one of them ones when you're just sitting on the edge of your seat. It was about 15 minutes, I think Smith scored in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like takes forever. It's just an eternity waiting for that final whistle to blow and hoping that we don't concede a silly goal, but we didn't. But then we had that great defence there, didn't we?
And this is, as you said, the 1-0 to the Arsenal, and just a defensive back four that are five, which England took on as their back five as well through the Euros and the World Cups in that era as well. 95 wasn't as good for us. We got to the Cup Winners' Cup final against Real Zaragoza. You know what? This is one of my early. So when I met my wife in 93, her family, and she had a little boy who I adopted and everything else. They were into Arsenal. I wasn't really into football. I was in sales, and I started following the scores for my boy and my brother-in-law, who were big into Arsenal and stuff like that. So through 93, 94, I remember the Parma one, and like the 89 stuff, just because everybody knew about 89. But 95, the Cup Winners' Cup against Real Zaragoza was probably the very first game that I literally sat down on front of a telly to watch the full 90 minutes. My son was sitting there beside me, and he's what age would he have been? 6, 7 years of age. And he sat there, and at the end of the game, he was crying, and I had to put him to bed, and it was awful. And he was crying because of, unfortunately, boys, I'm going to have to show you this. It was
couldn't go for that one. That in its way tells you just how much he's suffering. Naive, hitting a long one, and it's gone in. Amazing. David Seaman, all he could do is lie in the back of his goal. And with the most extraordinary goal possibly that's ever been scored in a European game, certainly in a European final, Zaragoza looked as though they've stolen it.
Right, did he mean it, Trev? Did he mean it?
What? I don't care whether he meant it. I'm in a foul mood with you now, because that's the only time Tottenham fans have been absolutely relentless for months after, and to this day still tease us about it. And we haven't got a comeback. I still think Seaman should have saved it, to be honest.
I do as well.
Seaman should have saved it.
I do.
Definitely.
See, I think he was playing a percentages game. And that was what he played, and that was why he was so good. And if he played a different game, we would have let in a lot more goals. in other games.
Yeah,
he let a similar goal in the 2002 World Cup, didn't he?
Yeah,
indeed.
He did.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed.
yeah.
Mm.
But that was awful.
I don't want to.
Review 2 there.
No, I didn't go.
What's
no.
that?
Oh no.
I'm just asking if that's the only European game I've been to, and it was. We didn't have the greatest team. The team had started to fall apart. We were playing awful in the league. We'd lost to Millwall in the FA Cup. That was a horrible night as well. We got locked in the pub by the police to save our skins from the Millwall fans. But it was Paris was a great trip for me. I think we went away for 3 days, a group of us on a small coach, and it was a great trip. Apart from that game of football, the team just wasn't good enough. We'd gone from 1991, fantastic team. By 94, 95, the players, they'd started to fall away a bit. Even that famous defence. Adams was obviously got his personal problems, and I think he had a few injuries as well. People were constantly saying the defence is getting too old now. Dixon and Winterburn were pushing 30. Adams was, like I say, he seems to have injury problems as well. Merson had his problems that were going to come out. But I think they came out towards the end of that season, didn't they? Because George Graham was still there.
Not long after the end of George Graham's era at Merson, and then when Wenger came in, you had Adams. The Tuesday clubs were in full flow. The Bank of Friendship, it was off its time. Is that the fair thing to say, Andy, or was it?
Yeah.
More than that?
But the club itself, Graham had obviously lost the dressing room as well. If in his book he said that he was going to go at the end of the season, and he was expecting the board to perhaps offer him a more senior post, perhaps on the board. But then the rumours started coming out about his these transfer dealings, and he wasn't named to start off with, and then he was named, and it all came to a head that day in February, and the club sacked him.
So talk to me about this. So the George Graham demise, he leaves us in. It was 96. He left us, wasn't it? You said February.
This season, 94, 95.
No. But February was February, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
October.
21st of February.
Burton Shaw took over till the end of the season. Was it Burton Shaw?
No, it was Stuart Houston.
Of course it was. Yeah.
Stuart Houston.
Yeah. Burton Shaw took over from Howe.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting them mixed up. Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on the Bung Gate and that, without getting any of us into trouble? What's your thoughts on that? I think probably in a lot of dealings in business, there are things that make just there's facilities that are used to just make a business like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Whether it's you get this contract, we'll help you with this contract, and so on. Further back, it might have been brown envelopes, it might have been a hotel, it might have been whatever. What's your thoughts on this, Mark? I'll go to you first.
Well, you're not going to say one thing, can you? I've got no idea because, again, none of us were involved in it. We don't know what actually happened.
No, but I'm saying, what's your thoughts on it? You're not going to know the facts.
Well, my thoughts are, he paid the money back.
Yeah.
Was he the only one, Andy?
I don't think it was an exception, shall we say?
No, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Was he the only one? Venables, others have all.
You don't know, do you? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You don't know, but the impression that I got from the whole thing was it wasn't an exception. He was just unlucky to get called, named, and blamed. Probably because the board wanted to get rid of him, as Andy said, he wanted to go anyway. They probably maybe didn't want him at a higher level. You don't know. They used it as an excuse. Oh, we got him here, blah, blah, blah. Let's get rid of him.
I think that the papers obviously found out about Graham. It was the newspapers that exposed him. And then the FA conducted an inquiry and they looked for other instances. Now, I reckon there were. It's unbelievable that there weren't. And the FA said we can't find any other shenanigans that have gone on with transfers until Brian Clough died. And they found that Brian Clough had been involved. But I think that they didn't want to look too deep in case they found that it was rife and everyone was doing it. And then you're going to have a whole scandal within football being corrupt. And so they got their one man. He's the scapegoat. We'll deal with him, and the rest of it we'll forget about. So it looks like we're doing something about it, and it looks like we're looking for it, but they didn't want to open it up, and the game in England could have fallen apart.
We started this program talking about number 10s, famous number 10s. Go on, Trev.
Mate, you don't use that tone, Fergus. But you can't move on from such.
I'm not. Sorry, I'm not. I didn't mean no tone.
Can't move on from such an important part of our club's history, the ending of George Graham's career, my favourite manager at Arsenal, without me having my little bit on it, mate. And to sum it up for me, you don't have to name names. Whether he was or whether he was doing it, the papers say he was, the FA said he was. But as fans, we'll never know whether he definitely was or he definitely wasn't. I do agree with the lads. I think the board probably used it as a tool to help him out of the door, but they undoubtedly did. They probably wanted him out because the team was on a downward spiral. But absolutely, and I make no accusations here, and I name no names, but if George Graham was the only bloke, the only manager, or the only person within football that was doing that, I would eat my hat, and then I'll eat it again, because there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that if George Graham was doing it, others were doing it. And I'll tell you what makes me say that, be even more certain about that, is that we were at an age where agents were just starting to become very prolific and high standout people in football. Agents were becoming involved more and more and more, and it was that period when they were. And we all know what happens with agents, mate. We all know the millions and the millions and the millions of pounds that agents are taking out of football. And from my perspective, that was probably the start of it. And George Graham got wrong side of it early doors and got really unlucky. But in my view, no way was he the only one, mate. No way.
No, I totally agree and believe you. And we got no evidence, no nothing, and everything we say is just like our thoughts rather than anything else. But yeah, number 10s. Talked about number 10s very, very briefly because Brice Rioch became manager shortly for a short period of time, and he handed over to Arsene Wenger, which is the next sort of era we'll talk about. But he did sign, and the most significant thing I think Brice Rioch did was sign Dennis Bergkamp, a famous number 10 mark. You had a number 10 Merson mug. We've re-signed ESR, Emile Smith-Rowe. He's one of our own and all that. On a long-term contract. Your thoughts on the Iceman?
Probably same as everyone else's. I mean, what?
Chuck me a bone.
I mean, what can you say about a player who was that good?
We will talk much, much more about him.
To be honest with you, the only thing he did, which was bad in my view, was miss that penalty in 1999.
Well, we'll be talking about that next week. We will. Last thing, Andy, your thoughts on George Graham being manager at that lot down the road?
I think it's absolutely hilarious that Tottenham have won only 2 trophies in the last 30 years, and one of them is a with a manager who they absolutely detest. I think if they'd won any more trophies, they would discount that trophy that they won under George Graham. And then they sacked him for some spurious reason, got Glenn Hoddle in, and we beat them in the FA Cup semi-final in his first game. Take that.
Yeah.
You know what? That is a perfect. Go on, go finish what you're going to say.
Yeah. So one last thing about George Graham. At the time, I didn't agree with the way that the board managed it. I think that they should have taken a bit more time to find out what had happened. Yeah. And they gave a knee-jerk reaction. They just sacked him. And at the end of 94, 95, me and my brother, with the decline, the way that the team was playing, we both decided we're going to give up our season tickets. It's a form of protest of the way that George Graham was managed or handled by the board. So we gave up our season tickets, or we said we were going to give them up. Basically, we didn't renew them. So we got to the renewal date, and we're still in an orange. Should we renew or not? Should we renew or not? And we decided no. And then I think it was about 3 days later, we signed Dennis Bergkamp, and everyone that wanted a season ticket was on the season ticket list. All said, yeah, we'll have a season ticket now. So after that season, I was never able to get a season ticket again.
I think if you're on the list for a very short time, you might get one right now at the minute, especially as a single. So, Trevor, any final words before we close? Because I think Andy summed it up nicely there with laughing at Tottenham.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful chat again with these boys. It's I started the show thinking, am I going to be able to have an input here, because I didn't go to that many games, but I've ended up outstaying my welcome a bit, really, with some of the things I've said. But once again, Andy and Mark, fantastic. And Fergus, some of those films you've dug out tonight, you've really upset me with the Naeem one, to be honest. But the rest of them, you've had me going, mate. You've had me welling up. You've had the hairs on the back of my neck standing in, because it's all about Arsenal. And it's all about how great we are. And so thanks for that, mate. And thank you two boys for another brilliant hour and a half. Hour and a half? Where did that go?
I know.
We only scratched the surface.
I know.
That's the thing, though. It is only scratching the surface. It's talking about the Arsenal history, telling like it really was. And if we got into detail, we could probably do an hour on each year in some of these scenarios. Our next one, especially with you two guys, because, well, maybe not Mark. Mark could probably get a decade in about 4 or 5 minutes, but that's different.
Got to be succinct, mate. Got to be succinct.
Yeah. The next one we'll do is 96 to 2018, the Wenger years. We will see Mark's hat. We'll talk about FA Cup glory. We'll talk about moving stadiums. We'll talk about invincible years. We'll talk about some great players and much more. I really do hope you've enjoyed this. We'll post up on Twitter and on YouTube and audio platforms. If you like what we do, just click a like, follow the guys and read their website, The Arsenal History. But thank you very much, everybody. I'm starving. I didn't have any dinner before this started, so I've got to go. Thanks very much, guys.
1-0 to the...
You've been listening to Guns and Yellow Ribbons, an Arsenal podcast by Arsenal fans for Arsenal fans. Follow us on Facebook at Guns and Yellow Ribbons and Twitter at Guns and Ribbons. And remember to rate and review us too.